Hi, everybody. It's Ellie Bryan here. Welcome back to my channel, The Art of Becoming. I'm very excited today because we're really going to dive into our first subject today, and we're really getting into the meat and potatoes of this channel. Today, the segment is going to be about reporting abuse, why it's important to report abuse, why don't people report abuse, and we're going to get into some statistics of things. Um, for me, I can talk out of my mouth all day long, and y'all can take my word for it, but I think it's important that I have statistics ready for you guys so I have the credentials to back me up as well. So, kind of the agenda for today is we're going to talk about why people don't report abuse. And I'm even going to touch on why I didn't report in my story um, of why I didn't report at first. So, we're going to hit that. And then again, we're going to talk about some statistics of things and what to do, and even resources to contact if you need or want to report about abuse. And then this one is going to be about sexual abuse. Sorry, I did not mention that in the beginning. If you think about it, a lot of women and men have come forward or told other individuals about how they have been sexually abused. It's everywhere, in the church, in the world, in a Walmart. I've been at school, literally at school, and somebody disclosed to me that they have been abused. And so I gave them the resources that they needed. I told them who to contact. I gave them numbers. I did what I needed to do. But it goes to my point of sexual abuse is everywhere. It's everywhere. And if you look online at the statistics, which we'll hit in a little bit, it happens. So it's very common. But if you look at in the worldview of how many people have been sexually abused, it's a big number, right? But then when you look up how many people actually report when they have been abused, that number is very small. And that's an issue. And that needs to be talked about. Okay, so let's dive in. All right. So, if you didn't know, if you are watching and you are in the state of Indiana, you are a mandatory reporter. Your teachers are mandatory reporter. I cannot say that word for the life of me. Your pastor, if you are a saint in a church or a servant in the church, your pastor and your pastor's wife are a mandatory reporter. Goodness gracious. Anyone around you has to report if they confide in you. There was actually a story not too long ago. There was a church. This was a couple years ago. I don't remember the church's name, but I know the story of there was a person in the church was acts of sexual abuse towards women and young girls, and a lot of people in the church knew about it, and they did not report. So sure enough, a good handful of people, I think it was 14, went to jail, not because they did the abuse, but because they did not report the abuse. It's important to report if you know. I was doing some studying today, some research, and the amount of information that I found, I was flabbergasted. I It literally shocked my world and it shook my world a little bit. According to research, 1 in 4 women have been sexually abused. 1 in 4. 1 in 6 men have been sexually abused. Like what I said, people who have been abused are everywhere. Everywhere. Now, I was doing some more research, and it was saying, according to a website called Victims of Sexual Violence, ages 12 to 34 are at a highest risk years for rape and sexual assault. And that is enough to be said why this conversation needs to be brought up more. This is why this conversation does not need to be taboo, does not need to be an uncomfortable situation. It doesn't need to be put under the rug. From the ages of 12 to 34, those are the highest risk levels for rape and sexual assault. Our kids are in school. Our kids are out in the world. A lot of our kids now are working as early as they can to get money because they want a new car, they want to go out with their friends. They are subject to abuse everywhere. So now we're going to really hit on why don't people report? There's a lot of people in this world who have been looked over because they didn't think that they were going to be believed. I was one of those people. I was abused from the ages 6 to 9. I didn't come forward and report the abuse till I was 14. That is a huge gap of time that was just there to let it fester. For me, I did not report the abuse because my abuser was not only just a family member, but he worked in my church. He had spiritual authority over me. He had the upper hand on me. At least that's what it felt like. He was very active in his church role. He mentored people. He had people over at his house almost every day doing Bible studies. He was mentoring to his neighbors. He was just very active in the church world as a whole, not just in our church, but everywhere. He was in the jail ministries. He he did a lot under, you know, ministry as a whole. And for me, because he was so active in people and families' lives, if I would have came forward, I was scared that I wasn't going to be believed. I I'm like, if I come forward about this, who is going to believe me? He has spiritual authority over me. He comes to me at the altar and he prays for me. Nobody was going to believe me, or so I thought. And then also, he was my grandfather. For me, I didn't just want to taint his image, but also I didn't want to lose a grandfather. He was really the only grandfather figure that I had in my life. And as a young child, I didn't want to risk losing that because I didn't want to lose family. I didn't want to lose my best friends who were my cousins. I didn't want to lose anybody. So just me keeping it quiet and keeping it to myself was the solution for it, when in reality, it wasn't. It was causing more damage than what it was good. And again, every person's story is different. So the reason why I did not report is going to be different than what Sally down the road, why she didn't report. Every story is different. And I can speak on behalf of mine, but this is where I hand it off to you guys and we bring up the subject of reporting abuse. And we talk about, why are there reasons beside mine why people don't report? I can name plenty of other reasons why people don't report, but on the behalf of my own story, I can say why. And then I was doing some more research, and this is the part that really kind of hit a little different here. 93% of people know their abuser. So if you have 93% of people knowing their abuser, that of itself is probably the reason why they're not coming forward, because they don't want to taint their image, because they have became a trusted person in your life. And so when they become trusted and then they twist it to where they have power over you, they're going to make it seem like no one's going to believe you, or they normalize it to where there's no reason to report. So 93% of people know their abuser. 59% of people are acquaintances when it comes to abuse. 34% are family, and 7% are strangers. Just something to keep in mind. There are so many people that have been sexually abused, but how many people actually make the report? So again, these are high numbers of people who know of their abuser, but how many people make the report? According to the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, 63% of sexual assaults are not reported to the police. 63%. Only 12% of child sexual abuse is reported to the authorities. Only 12%. To stop pedophiles, to stop sexual abusers, to stop rapists, to stop predators, we need to report. When you report and you take them to court, you have access to put them on that sex register list. You have that power. You take back that power and you put them in jail to stop the wave of abuse occurring. Um, and it goes on to say, like, we need to advocate for our children. Yes, children have a voice. I have a voice. My little brother has a voice. The kids that I work with have a voice. But they need grown adults who will advocate for them and choose to do the right thing. When if my kid, which I pray that this does not happen, but on the off chance that it does, if my kid came up to me and told me that someone hurt them, it is up to me to make the right decision, because they will remember what I do 20 years down the road. They will say, my mommy just told me that we'll just pray about it and we'll move on eventually and we'll just pray for healing. No, what mommy's going to do is she's going to go to the police and we're going to report this. So I'm stopping another predator on the street from hurting our children. End of discussion. And that's why it's important for us as adults to advocate for our children and know, like, we are in the world, y'all. We're not of the world, we're in the world. And there are people, evil people in this world. And we need to take back what the devil stole from us and protect our little ones. So I want to open up some resources for y'all if you guys want to report. If someone comes to you and says, this happened to me, I have 2 resources that will help you make that report. Again, everybody in Indiana is a mandatory reporter. They have to report. So if you told your neighbor, if you told a Walmart custodian, I don't know, they have to report. So it expands past this, but the easiest one is 911. And if you don't feel comfortable calling 911, you can actually go to the police station and say, I need to make a report, and they will lead you to the right people to make that report. Also, you can contact DCS. I'm going to get to that in a second. But before we talk about DCS, because I understand there's a tainted image on DCS, before we get that, I want to share how I reported. So, how I reported was after I told my parents, they scheduled a family counseling meeting with a professional because they knew that they would report for us. So, we went to a business called Care to Change, and we met with a lady who is now my therapist, and we disclosed to her my story, and then she reported it to the police and made the report for us. So, whenever you tell a professional, a social worker, that is just another outlet to disclose your story, so they will report for you. So that's how our family chose to report that. So now also you can contact DCS. There is a hotline you can call 24/7, and I will have a thumbnail of all this information at the end of this video. So I can understand why people try to stay away from DCS. When people think of DCS, they think of, these women coming into the household, stripping their children away from hospitals, their homes. It's just very tainted. Like, when people ask me what I'm in school for, I told them I'm going into social work. And they automatically assume that I was going to be one of those people that was going to take their children out of the home. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm doing. That's not the field I'm going into. But quite honestly, that's not how that works. DCS has showed up at my front door before. It was right after we reported the abuse. I woke up one morning and I was asleep and my mom was working, and my mom ran up to my room and she said, Ellie, wake up, CPS is here. You need to get dressed and come down here immediately. And I'm like, I was shaking, because when you think of CPS, you're like, what is going on? It was terrifying that a woman came to my house questioning me, taking pictures of our water, our lights, all the things, to see if my mom was suitable to take care of me. I know she was suitable for me, but knowing that it was in the hands of another person was extremely scary. I understand that. So she came, she did her job, she asked what my story was. Her job wasn't to take me away. That wasn't her job. Her job was to advocate for me, to make sure that I was okay. She didn't know if it was my mom that was abusing me. She didn't know if it was a neighbor. She didn't know the story, but she came to do her job to advocate for me, to make sure that I was safe in the home that I was living in. Obviously, she found out very shortly that I was safe in my home, that I was taken care of, that there was no issues around my house. So shortly after, she became an advocate for me. She was checking in on me to make sure I was okay. If I was asking for a case update, she would be the one to inform me. So I understand DCS. I think a lot of people hear more horror stories than what they do good stories of how DCS is a help. They have so much resources for you, but they are here to advocate for our children. And they are more advocates than most people around us. And I think that is something to appreciate. Again, I understand that it's hard to trust, CPS or certain social workers, but not everyone is out to get you. I've had to learn that. My family's had to learn that. They're just truly just trying to advocate for your children. Um, I understand my story is different than others. Why I didn't report will be different than what the other person's reason was why they didn't report. But it's time to get the conversation going of reporting abuse and not letting it fester for years. If you think about it, in a church's perspective, there are so many hurt women and men in their 50s and 60s because no one advocated for them or reported their abuser. I've had so many conversations with women in their 50s or 60s telling me how lucky I am because no one advocated for them. And when you don't deal with the root issue when it occurred 30 years ago, until you are healed, until you receive the correct resources to heal, you are carrying that for years and years, and it becomes an unhealed issue. And then when something hurts you more because of that abuse, it's now a trigger and it carries on. And so because no one advocated for them. And that's a big no. And as the church of today, we need to stand up and do the right thing. So it's up to us to be change makers and let the healing take over and pray, but not let it stop there. And we need to make reports. We can pray for healing. We can pray for anxiety to flee. We can pray for fear to leave. Yes, that is good. We want that. But also, I can pray at the altar every day for God to take away my fear. But if my abuser is not behind bars and he still lives a certain amount of time away from me, that is an issue. That's not stopping him from abusing someone else my age or abusing an older woman or a man. It doesn't stop. So, yes, we can pray and seek God and fast. I encourage that. Do that. God has healed me from anxiety, depression. God has done those things. I also seeked resources to help me develop coping mechanisms to get to where I am today. But it's up to us to end the abuse properly by reporting the abuse and reporting the abuser. We need to simply advocate for our future generation. I was talking to my mom this morning and I said, when a family moves into the neighborhood, what are the first things that they look out for? Do they look for a pool in the neighborhood? Do they look for the best playground in their neighborhood so they can play with their friends? Is that the first thing we look out for? Or is the first thing we do is we look at the neighborhood and then we go on the sex offender list to see if any of those people in the neighborhood are on that list? It's important. I remember when we first moved to Indiana, that was one of the first things my parents did is they checked the sex offender list. Yeah, they checked the sex offender list to see if any of our neighbors um, were sexual offenders, predators, pedophiles that we needed to be aware of. Because if we moved there, my dad was not going to let us be around that. That's not safe. So this is kind of the gist of what this is, the segment of what this is about. It is up to us to report abuse. It's not another taboo conversation. It's a real world issue that needs to be addressed, not just in the world, but also in the church. There are people that need to heal, and there's people in the church that need to help others to advocate for them. It's a normal thing to do. It's normal. It's not taboo. And so I really want to engage the audience. And if there's been a time where you had to go through a certain thing. And again, your story is different than mine. So I want to hear from you. Like, if you did not report right away, what were the reasonings behind that? I guarantee you, you and yourself are not alone. You're not alone. There, again, what was it? One in 1 in 4 women have been abused. It's everywhere. There are people everywhere that understand you. There are people that feel like they're alone when in reality they're not. There are true people out there who are seeking resources, who are seeking advocacy because they know that they can be believed. And I'm telling you today, you are capable of making that report. You are worthy enough to make that report, not just for you, but for your future children and then your children's children. You are capable and you are worthy enough to put yourself first, to make that abuser, you know, be gone. You are worthy enough for that. You don't have to sit on the sidelines and think that, woe is me, like I guess it was just my story. No, that's not your story. You are capable of healing. You are capable of making that report. You are not alone. And so I really want to hear from the audience, for the people that are watching. What is your story? Only if you feel comfortable. If you want to text me personally, I would love to hear, um, maybe why you didn't report at first, or what was your experience with reporting abuse. Because again, it's more than just my words. I have my story on why I did not report right away, but somebody else's will be different. And I think that's very valuable. And I think it's worth to be added. So today was talking about reporting abuse. And I think it's time that we take a step up and we really analyze ourselves and we make a change for the better of our community, our children, our aunts, our uncles, our servants in the church. So thank you guys so much for coming along with this and joining me on this, the sensitive conversation. I know it's not easy to hear, but when we have conversations like this, it's one step forward to making a change in our communities. And so I'm really excited to see what is going to be done through this video, and I hope someone learned something. Again, I'm going to put a picture at the very end of this, um, of phone numbers to call, the DCS hotline. I will put that at the end of that. So thank you guys so much for joining and being a part of this journey with me once again. Thank you guys so much for your love, encouragement, and support. It's forever, cherished in my heart, and I truly couldn't have done it without y'all. So I hope you guys have a blessed day, and thank you so much for tuning in and watching this segment about reporting abuse.